Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Previously, let me introduce myself. My name is Citra Ayu Ananda. I am a fourth semester student of English Education Study Program. Okay, immediately I will read material about three context set language lesson. Everything in its place. Three context set language lesson. Have you ever gone grocery shopping without a list? It might seem like a good idea at first, but then you wander aimlessly. You have some vague idea of what you need and why you need it, but that idea is not concrete or detailed. In the end, it's amazing that you end up getting the things you really wanted or needed. If you do manage to remember them, it's only by chance. That's kind of how it is to learn vocabulary out of context. You can present your student with vocabulary list and grammar exercise, but without any knowledge of why they are learning what they are learning. These activities feel aimless to them. If your student do acquire knowledge without any context, it's probably by chance. But setting context in a language lesson can be tricky. A foreign language classroom, more than almost any other kind of classroom, can feel disconnected from the real life context in which the material being taught will be used. Setting context in a way that feels natural rather than forced can be very challenging. So, how can you bring context into your language lessons? What concrete step can you take to make vocabulary list and grammar concept come to life in an environment which often feels so artificial? Why is context important? First, in case you need any more persuading, here's a brief explanation of exactly what context is and why it's so foundational to a great language lesson. Context is simple part the entire reason for learning a language. Without context, the text of language learning are nothing more than meaningless rituals. Your students are memorizing lists of words they will never use. They are acquiring grammar rules for situations that exist only within the contours of textbook. Essentially, without context, your entire curriculum takes place within an imaginary universe that no one cares about. Context provides the real-life situation in which language is used. Setting context allow your student to get at least a simulation of real-life practice. It may not be practical to take them on a trip to experience the target language in person, but you can give them a context that prepares them for the day when they might do just that. Context is the most authentic motivator in the language classroom. Sure, You can try giving out praises or motivate your student with good grades and compliments. But the best motivation is intrinsic. Your student want the satisfaction of knowing they can accomplish a challenging and useful task. When language is put in context, it gives students that intrinsic motivation they need. So, now that you know teaching language in context is important, how exactly do you do it? How to set context in a language lesson? It's not easy to give a language lesson a meaningful context in the classroom. In this post, we'll cover some concrete ideas for creating context-based lessons. But first, here are some tricks you can use to introduce context in any lesson. Build connections. It's one of the five of language learning for a reason. Connection are critical to the process of language learning precisely because they make it easier to set a context. One way to do this is by connecting the subject of the lesson to something in the lives of your student. For the example, the first, who watched the royal wedding? Second, can anyone describe a wedding they have been to? The third, let's brainstorm some words we use to talk about weddings. You might also make a connection to a TV show or a celebrity that your student enjoy. Another helpful way to build connection is by starting with something they already know about their own language. Give me some words to describe this picture. What do these words have in common? They are all adjectives. Let's talk about adjective in the target language. Provide examples of the real life situation in which the vocabulary would be used if what vocabulary is on the agenda. Begin by talking about what is like to go to a restaurant in the target country culture. If you are teaching vocabulary about travel, talk about situation your student might encounter at an airport, train station, or hotel. For example, you could show your intermediate French class the Fluent U video working at a hotel in Paris. Fluent U takes real-world videos like music videos, movie trailers, news, and inspiring talks and turns them into personalized language learning lessons. All of the videos for each language or categories by level, format, and topic, so it's easy to find a video that's appropriate for demonstrating real life context on virtually any subject to any student. Keep the same context throughout the lesson. It's important to keep your goals in view for the entire duration of the lesson. Switching from one context to another can be confusing. Provide a variety of activities to practice speaking, reading, writing, and listening to text and conversation that fit within the same context. For example, if you are teaching vocabulary for visiting the doctor's office, you might have students listen to a record conversation between a doctor and a patient. Read an informational article about health care in the target culture and create a skit or a dialogue on the topic to act out for the class. Here are some more ideas to bring context to life in your classroom. Ready, set, context. 3. Context setting for language lesson. Here are some specific examples of lesson in which the context is clearly set and remains clear throughout the lesson. Visit to a restaurant. Begin by talking to the student about a reason. Visit to a popular restaurant, preferably one that they consider a favorite. Talk about the food they serve, the menu, and your interaction with the servers. Then move on to describing what a restaurant is like in the target culture. What are some different kinds of restaurants that are popular? Cafes, pubs, fast food. What kind of food would they be likely to serve? What are the menus like? If you have access to any sort of realia, such as menus or photos, this can bring life to the discussion. Allow the discussion to move to the kind of language you use in a restaurant. What do you say to a server when you order something? How do you ask for more information about an item on the menu? How might you thought about the meal with those at the table with you? Next, model some of the vocabulary that might be used in this conversation, asking the class to repeat the words after you. When they have heard the words a few times, try giving them a passage to listen to with relevant vocabulary. For example, this transcript and exercise from Audiria are ideal for advanced Spanish students. Well, they have had some practice with this word and phrase. Ask them to compose and enact their own creative skits taking place in a restaurant in the target culture. If you have plastic food and authentic table setting, it can add to the sense of overall context. Slang words and idioms. Begin by asking students to brainstorm words and expressions that mean something different from their literal translation. Ponder the difficulty of trying to translate such expression to someone who does not know the language. Next, go over a list of common expressions in the target language. The nice thing about this is that many of such idioms are actually quite funny. For example, the French have the wonderful expression occupe-toi de tes oignons. Take care of your onions. For telling someone to mind his own business, you can find other funny idioms in various languages on these TID blogs list as well as all over the 20 learner blogs. Here are just a few examples. Then you can read a passage or out a funny sentence employing as many of these idioms as possible. Be as dramatic as possible with gesture, voice, and even props and costume for maximum effect. Next, give the children a fill in the blank activity in which they must choose the slang word or expression that makes the most sense as a completion. Finally, have children write their own silly stories using as many of the slang words and expressions as possible, and then share them. Holiday celebration. This is best done in the context of a holiday you are presently celebrate. For example, if it's close to Easter, you might make a connection to the Chinese Ming festival, which, like Easter, is a spring holiday with themes of death and rebirth. Present information about the target culture holiday and then ask students to create a Venn diagram revealing similarities and differences to the holiday they celebrate in their own culture. In the process, home in on vocabulary words for talking about the celebration. Next, give children a simple reading in the target language about the holiday. Finally, as students, they record videos in which they recreate that particular holiday celebration using relevant vocabulary. More than anything else, context will bring language to life for your student. So, if nothing else seems to be working, try putting your lesson in the proper context and see what a difference it can make. That is all from the material that I read. I say goodbye and thank you. Wallahul muwafiq ila aqwamit thoriq. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.